Max went stiff, not a bark, not a whimper, just frozen. His ears snapped left toward a snowdrift we'd already cleared, and his lip curled back like he was staring at a ghost. This was December 44, Hurtgen Forest, where the trees were more shrapnel than wood, and whole companies walked in and never came out. I was 10 feet behind Sergeant Killian when the dog locked up. 3 seconds later, the forest exploded. MG-42 fire tore through the space where we'd been standing. 11 men survived that ambush. We shouldn't have, not one of us. The first burst came from exactly where Max had been staring. That high-pitched, ripping snarl, 1,200 rounds per minute, tearing through the air like a chainsaw. Tracers lit up the fog. I hit the ground hard, arms over my head, brain screaming. Killian was roaring orders I could barely hear. Yates got his BAR up and started firing back, then jerked backward, clutching his shoulder. Hit! Killian yelled for smoke. I threw mine toward the ravine, white smoke billowing up, thick and choking. We scrambled backward, half crawling, half running, dragging Yates between us, blood soaking through his coat. Murphy had Max's leash looped around his wrist, and the dog was leading the way back through the trees, nose down, moving fast. The Germans kept firing blind into the smoke. Bullets snapped through the fog, hitting nothing. We made it 50 yards, then 100. The firing stopped. We collapsed behind a blown-out bunker, gasping, shaking. Murphy was staring at Max, face pale, eyes wide. The dog sat calmly, tongue out, panting, like nothing had happened. Murphy said it quiet, said the dog knew before they fired. That morning changed everything. But to understand why that dog knew what we didn't, why he saw death coming 3 seconds before the rest of us even heard the rifles click, I need to take you back 3 weeks. Back to when the Hurtgen Forest was still just a name on a map. Back to before I knew what frozen hell really meant. The Hurtgen Forest. Most people have never heard of it, but if you fought there, you never forgot it. September 1944 to February 1945. 50 square miles of dense pine forest along the Belgian-German border that chewed up entire divisions. The goal was simple on paper. Push through, take the Roer River dams, clear the way into Germany. The reality was something else entirely. Trees so thick you couldn't see 10 yards. Artillery that used tree bursts to rain shrapnel from above. Ground so soft from rain and snow that foxholes filled with water overnight. You couldn't dig in. You couldn't see the enemy. You just bled. By December, the 28th Infantry Division, my division, the Bloody Bucket, had lost over 6,000 men. Companies that went in with 150 came out with 30. The Germans had been fortifying these woods for months. Bunkers, minefields, interlocking fields of fire. They knew every trail, every clearing, every kill zone. We stumbled through blind, cold, starving. I was a scout with the 2nd Battalion, 110th Infantry Regiment. Scout is a polite way of saying expendable. You moved ahead of the main body, probed enemy positions, marked minefields. You moved light. Rifle, canteen, compass, no radio. Most scouts didn't last long. I'd been doing it since November. That made me a veteran by Hurtgen standards. The morning of December 16th started like every other morning in that frozen nightmare. Cold, wet, dark. My boots were so caked with frozen mud I couldn't feel my toes anymore. We'd been in the line 19 days straight. Started with 42 men in the platoon. By that morning, we were down to 23. The rest were dead, wounded, or missing. Captain Howell called for a scout patrol at dawn. The brass wanted to know if the Germans were pulling back or reinforcing. We needed eyes forward, past a burned-out pillbox, into the tree line about 800 yards northeast. Sergeant Killian picked the team, himself, me, Corporal Dietrich, a farm kid from Wisconsin, Private Yates with the BAR, and Lance Corporal Murphy with his dog. Murphy was 20 years old from Akron, Ohio. Quiet kid. Hadn't shaved in a month. He'd inherited the dog, Max, after the original handler took shrapnel to the throat in November. Max was a Belgian Malinois, maybe 4 years old, lean and scarred. He'd been in country since North Africa, reassigned to Europe after the Mediterranean campaigns. I'd watched Murphy with that dog over the past 2 weeks. Saw him check Max's paws every night, picking ice from between the pads. Saw him split his rations, giving the dog half, even when he was starving himself. Saw him talking to Max in the frozen foxholes, whispering things he couldn't say to the rest of us. The kid trusted that animal more than he trusted most people. Maybe he was right, too. Most war dogs were used for messenger runs or casualty detection, but Max was trained for patrol work, sniffing out ambushes, tripwires, enemy positions. He was the best soldier in our platoon, and he never complained once. We moved out at 6 in the morning, just before first light. The forest was still dark, fog hanging in the trees like dirty gauze. You couldn't see more than 20 feet. Murphy kept Max on a short lead, 6 feet of canvas leash. The dog moved smooth and low, nose work in the air. He didn't bark, didn't pull, just padded along, ears swiveling like radar dishes. I stayed 5 yards behind Murphy, watching the flanks. The ground was terrible, cratered from artillery, fallen trees everywhere, tripwires, mines, unexploded shells. Every step was a gamble. We covered about 400 yards in the first hour, moving through deadfall and snow, the forest pressing in on all sides. Around 7:30, Max started acting different. His ears stayed forward longer, his head swung left, then right, then left again, like he was tracking something we couldn't hear. Murphy noticed. He shortened the leash, brought the dog closer. Killian held up a fist. We froze, listened. Nothing. Just wind in the trees and the distant thump of artillery from the south. Killian waved us forward. The terrain sloped down into a shallow ravine, maybe 15 feet deep, choked with deadfall and snow. Perfect ambush terrain. But everything in the Hurtgen was perfect ambush terrain. You couldn't avoid it. You just moved careful and hoped. Max stopped at the top of the ravine, just stopped dead, body rigid, staring down into the trees. His ears were locked forward. His tail dropped low. I'd never seen a dog go that still. It wasn't natural. Murphy knelt beside him, hand on the dog's neck. The dog didn't move, didn't look at Murphy, just stared down into that ravine like he was looking at something none of us could see. Killian waved us down. We spread out along the ridge line, 5 men in a loose skirmish line, trying to see what the dog saw. The ravine was maybe 60 yards across, thick with brush and fallen logs, but nothing was moving. No sound, no movement, just snow and shadows. Yates whispered that maybe the dog smelled old blood. God knows there was enough of it out here, but Max wasn't reacting like he smelled death. He was reacting like he smelled threat, active threat. His whole body was coiled tight, muscles bunched under his fur, and his lip was starting to curl back from his teeth. Murphy looked at Killian. Said he didn't like this. Killian didn't either. I could see it in his face, the tension around his eyes. But we had orders. We needed to check that trail. Killian said we'd go down slow, 5-yard intervals. Max would go first with Murphy. If the dog bolted, we all bolted. We nodded. Murphy stood, gave Max a little slack on the leash, and started down the slope. The dog took 3 steps and went rigid again, not just still, frozen, like someone had turned him to stone. His ears pinned back flat against his skull, his lips curled all the way back, exposing every tooth, but he didn't make a sound. And then, slowly, deliberately, he turned his head to the left, toward a snowdrift about 30 yards away on the far side of the ravine. I followed his gaze, saw nothing, just snow and broken trees and shadow. Murphy saw it too. He dropped to one knee, bringing his rifle up, eyes locked on that snowdrift. He hissed at Killian, said Max was giving him the alert. The alert. That was the trained signal. When a K-9 detected an enemy position, they'd lock onto it, silent, body rigid. Max had been trained for this in North Africa. Killian asked if he was sure. Murphy's voice was tight. Said the dog was sure. We had maybe 3 seconds to decide. Go forward and risk walking into a kill zone, or pull back and possibly spook the enemy into firing. Killian was still thinking when Max made the decision for us. The dog lunged, not toward the snowdrift, away from it. He wheeled around and bolted back up the slope, yanking Murphy off balance. Murphy stumbled, tried to hold the leash, and Max just dragged him backward, all 70 pounds of him pulling like a freight train. Killian roared for us to get down. I didn't think. I dropped, hit the snow-hard, rolling left toward the nearest tree. Dietrich went right. Yates threw himself flat. And then the forest exploded. The first burst came from the snowdrift, exactly where Max had been staring, MG-42. The sound was unmistakable, that high-pitched, ripping snarl, 1,200 rounds per minute, tearing through the air like a chainsaw through paper. Tracers lit up the fog, green streaks snapping past my head, thudding into trees, kicking up snow. I pressed myself into the ground, arms over my head, brain screaming. The machine gun was maybe 40 yards away, firing in long, disciplined bursts. 3-4 seconds each, then a pause. Professional. They knew what they were doing. Killian was screaming, but I could barely hear him over the gunfire. More firing erupted, rifles now. The sharp crack of Car 98 KS coming from at least 2 more positions. We'd walked right into a prepared ambush. 3-sided kill zone. They'd been waiting for us, probably since dawn, dug into spider holes and covered positions along the ravine. If Max hadn't alerted, if we'd gone another 20 yards down that slope, we'd have been cut to pieces in the open. Yates got his bar up and started returning fire, long hammering bursts toward the snowdrift. I couldn't see if he hit anything. The fog and smoke were too thick. I crawled backward on my elbows, trying to get behind a fallen log, my rifle clutched against my chest. Dietrich was yelling something I couldn't make out. Killian was crawling toward me, face pressed into the snow, dragging his rifle, blood on his hand. Murphy was behind a tree with Max. The dog was still pulling, trying to drag Murphy farther back, away from the fire. Smart dog, smarter than us. Another burst of machine gun fire ripped through the trees. I heard a scream. Yates. He jerked backward, clutching his shoulder, the BAR tumbling into the snow. Hit. Killian made a decision, yelled for smoke, smoke, and pulled back. Dietrich yanked a smoke grenade off his belt, pulled the pin, threw it toward the ravine. White smoke billowed up, thick and choking. I did the same with mine, throwing it to the right. In seconds, the whole area was socked in. Killian screamed at us to move. We scrambled backward, half crawling, half running, dragging Yates between us. He was conscious, gasping, blood soaking through his coat. Murphy had Max's leash looped around his wrist, and the dog was leading the way back, nose down, moving fast through the trees. The Germans kept firing, but they were shooting blind now, spraying into the smoke. Bullets snapped through the fog, hitting nothing. We made it 50 yards, then 100. The firing tapered off. They weren't pursuing. Didn't need to. They'd done their job. Stopped our patrol, inflicted casualties, kept us from getting intelligence. We collapsed behind a blown-out bunker, gasping, shaking. Yates was bleeding bad, but alive. Dietrich started packing the wound with sulfa powder and bandages. Killian was on his knees, hands on his thighs, breathing hard. I looked at Murphy and Max. The dog was sitting calmly now, tongue out, panting, like nothing had happened. Murphy was staring at him, face pale, eyes wide. He said it quiet, said the dog knew before they fired. Killian looked at the dog, then at Murphy, asked how. Murphy shook his head, said he didn't know. Smell, maybe. Hearing. But he knew. I thought about those 3 seconds. The way Max had frozen, the way his head had turned precise, deliberate, locking onto that snowdrift. The way he'd bolted, not in panic, in purpose, pulling Murphy back, forcing us to react. If the dog had hesitated, if Murphy had ignored him, if Killian had ordered us forward anyway, we'd all be dead. We got Yates back to the aid station. He survived. Lost use of his left arm, but he lived. The captain called off further patrols that morning. By midday, we started hearing reports from the south. Massive German counteroffensive, panzers breaking through in the Ardennes. The bulge had started. The ambush we'd hit wasn't random. It was part of the German defensive screen, covering their northern flank while they launched their main attack farther south. If we'd been wiped out, command wouldn't have known the Germans were still holding in force. Other patrols might have walked into the same trap. Max probably saved more than just our lives that morning. We pulled back to battalion lines that afternoon. The whole sector was in chaos. Reports coming in from every direction about German attacks, breakthroughs, encirclements. Our regiment got orders to dig in and hold. No more patrols, just hold the line. Yates was evacuated to a field hospital. Never saw him again. Heard later he made it home, one-armed, to a farm in Iowa. Killian got a field promotion to lieutenant 2 weeks later. Dietrich caught pneumonia in January and got sent to a hospital in England. Murphy stayed with the platoon. So did Max. We talked about what happened, the 5 of us, late that night in a frozen foxhole. Nobody could explain it. How does a dog know an ambush is waiting? What does he smell? What does he hear? We were all wearing the same wet wool and cordite stink as the Germans. The wind was wrong for scent. The enemy hadn't moved, hadn't made noise. Dietrich said maybe the dog felt it. Felt what? I asked. He said he didn't know. Tension, danger, like animals that run before an earthquake. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a guy who was there. Max stayed with our unit through Christmas, through the worst of the bulge, through the frozen hell of January 1945. He ran patrols with Murphy, carried messages, helped find wounded men in no man's land. He was the best soldier in the platoon, and he never asked for anything except food and a dry spot to sleep. In February, the K-9 Corps finally caught up with us. They'd lost so many dogs in the Hurtgen, they were consolidating units, pulling dogs back for rest and retraining. Murphy fought to keep Max, but orders were orders. The dog got transferred to a veterinary unit in the rear. Murphy was devastated. He'd bonded with that animal, trusted him more than he trusted most people. Watching them load Max into a truck, the dog looking back at Murphy with those dark eyes, it broke something in the kid. He kept saying it. He saved us. He saved us. I don't know what happened to Max after the war. The Army didn't keep great records of K-9 units. Some dogs got adopted by their handlers, some got reassigned, some got euthanized because they were too traumatized to go home. I hope Max made it. I hope somebody took him to a farm somewhere and let him live out his years chasing rabbits instead of death. The intelligence we didn't get that morning didn't matter as much as we thought it would. The bulge changed everything. But the 11 of us who survived that ambush went on to fight through the rest of the winter. We pushed the Germans back. We crossed the Ruhr. We made it into Germany. Every one of those men went on to do things, save other lives, make decisions that ripple outward in ways we'll never fully know. Yates went home and raised 4 kids on that Iowa farm. Dietrich became a teacher, taught 30 years of students in Milwaukee. Killian made captain, led men through the final push into Berlin. Murphy came home and worked construction, built houses, built a life. If we'd died in that ravine on December 16th, those ripples wouldn't exist. Max didn't change the war, but he changed our war. And maybe that's enough. I carried that moment with me for a long time. Still do. The memory of Max going rigid, the memory of his lip curling back, silent, staring at death, the memory of hitting the ground and hearing that machine gun open up, knowing we'd been seconds away from walking into it blind. You don't shake something like that. It stays in your bones. I'd wake up at night, years later, back home in Virginia, and I'd hear that MG-42 ripping through the trees. I'd see Max's eyes, locked on that snowdrift, seeing something I couldn't see. I didn't talk about it much. What's there to say? A dog saved my life. People don't understand. They think it's cute. They think it's a nice story. It wasn't cute. It was survival. It was the difference between going home and rotting in a frozen forest in Germany. The war taught me a lot of things, most of them hard. But one thing I learned in the Hurtgen on that frozen December morning is that courage doesn't always look the way you think it will. It doesn't always come from men with medals or officers with plans. Sometimes it comes from a scarred-up dog with better instincts than any of us, doing the job he was trained to do, asking for nothing except maybe a scratch behind the ears and a dry place to sleep. Max didn't think about heroism. He didn't think about tactics or strategy. He just knew danger when he smelled it, and he reacted the way his training and his instincts told him to react. He did his job, and because he did, 11 men lived to do theirs. I'm an old man now, 99 years old. The Hurtgen forest is just a forest again. Trees regrown, shell craters filled in, bunkers collapsed and buried. You can walk through there today and not know what happened. The ground doesn't remember, but I remember. I remember the cold, the fear, the way the forest felt like it was trying to kill you. I remember Sergeant Killian's face when he realized we'd walked into an ambush. I remember Yates screaming when the bullet hit him. I remember the sound of that MG-42, the way it tore through the air like the world was ending. And I remember Max, the way he stood there, body frozen, staring at nothing. The way he knew, the way he bolted, pulling Murphy back, forcing us to react, giving us those 3 seconds that meant the difference between living and dying. I've thought about it for 80 years, and I still don't know how he did it. Maybe it was training, maybe it was instinct, maybe dogs just see the world differently than we do. Pick up on things we're too stupid or too scared to notice. All I know is this: that dog saved my life, saved 11 lives, and nobody remembers. There's no medal for Max, no monument, no paragraph in a history book, just a few old men who are mostly dead now, and a memory of a frozen morning when everything could have gone wrong and didn't. War takes a lot from you, takes your friends, takes your innocence, takes your sleep and your peace, and sometimes your mind. But every now and then, if you're lucky, it gives something back, a moment of grace, a second chance, a scarred-up dog with better instincts than any of us, doing his job when it mattered most. I owe Max my life. I owe him 60 more years of sunrises and birthdays and grandchildren and quiet mornings with coffee on the porch. I owe him everything that came after December 16th, 1944. And all I can give him all these years later is this: the truth of what happened, the story of how a dog saw death coming and pulled us back from the edge. That's enough, I think. It has to be, because it's all I've got left to give.